The Batteries Included podcast is brought to you with United Chargers and their Grizzly range. The next generation of Grizzly is here. Meet the Grizzly Ultimate, the most powerful AC Level 2 charger for home use. With a maximum current of 80 amps, that's 19.2 kilowatts. Your vehicle could be charged up to twice as fast as a standard Level 2 and up to 15 times faster than a Level 1. And of course, it's Wi-Fi connected, so you can take control of your home charging, view stats, set a charging schedule, take part in demand response programs, and control your charger remotely. And that joins the lineup alongside the original Grizzly Classic. The Grizzly Duo, designed to charge two vehicles at the same time. The Grizzly Mini, a portable charging station. And the Grizzly Smart, a revolutionary smart EV charger. Those chargers can adjust the current from 16 amps up to 40 amps, that's 9.6 kilowatts. Plus, the Grizzly Ranger IP67 rated, built in Canada, and with the highest quality materials. You can order yours right now. Go to unitedchargers.com, that's unitedchargers.com. Hello and welcome along to the Batteries Included podcast. It's Friday, May 9th, 2025. Episode 87 tells us we're still getting away with it. On today's show, we'll be talking about the debut of the Jeep Compass, but it may be different to the Compass in your mind's eye right now. Rivian R2 and earnings and learnings, plus Model Y rear-wheel drive. The new cheaper Tesla now available. And of course, much, much more. I'm your host, Martin Lee from the EV News Daily podcast. Joining us today is Mr. Tom Malogany, star of The Stage and Screen, also senior editor at Inside EVs in his proper job, and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. And on Fridays, he hangs out with us reprobates. We've also Dominic Yoni, as always, longtime EV journalist and host of the YouTube channel Drive Electric with Dominic, and the very talented writer of this here podcast. I just read the words. And our very special guest this week is Isaiah from Rivian Updates, the YouTube and social media channels. Of course, you've seen him on the Out of Spec channels as well. We love a guest host on this podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Isaiah. How you been this week?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Excellent. Excellent. Lots and lots of news to get to. Tom's been driving a Nissan, and there's tons of stuff to get to. But first of all, Rivian released its Q1 2025 earnings report this week, and there's loads of interesting things to learn from it. There's been so many EV startups that have just gone down in flames over the last few years, and largely because that was through the SPAC or SPAC frenzy, where people didn't even look at financials of companies. They were just piling money in post-pandemic. Money was really cheap and just valuing stuff billions of dollars. And those companies have many of them long since gone. One of the great hopes of being an EV startup in America is Rivian. Of course, Lucid's another one. Big Saudi backing, of course, behind that one. But Rivian is our great hope to follow Tesla, being a startup car maker that actually not only survives, but thrives as well. And I think we can say after the quarter we've just had, their chances of survival are getting better and better. Isaiah, quick headline, a quick overview, if you will. Yeah. We were so happy to see that good financial news.
Yeah, it's exciting to see Rivian continue to meet their financial goals to prove that they will be here for the long term. But this is Rivian's second gross profitable quarter with the help of ZEV credits, but without the ZEV credits, Rivian would still be profitable with the help of some software sales. And so it kind of proves that Rivian themselves, without the help of credits, can be profitable as a country. And it's going to be interesting to see how quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 follow, leading up to the release of R2 in the first half of 2026.
I know. I'm sure Tom will want to ask you a question in a minute as a Rivian owner and someone excited about R2 coming. Let me first ask you, though, as a layman myself, isn't this just that massive deal they did with Volkswagen, putting a load of money into the company? Didn't that just hold them up, or are they not getting that yet?
So they're not fully getting that yet. So the deal with Volkswagen is helping them alleviate some of the software costs that go in their software vehicles. They're also still being paid some revenue in terms of software through Volkswagen to Rivian. But this investment from Volkswagen that Rivian will be getting by the end of the first half of 2025 doesn't directly show up as revenue on their balance sheet. And so while this Volkswagen joint venture is for sure helping, it proves that Rivian is still doing well without it, which I think is important to note.
Absolutely. Tom, as an owner, I know you're looking forward to R2. What's been on your mind this week about Rivian?
Well, this week I had an issue with my Rivian, and
Oh,
which is unusual because it's a minor issue, but it's an issue nonetheless. So I made a Rivian service call through the app, and they're coming in like a week. The trim to my one of my rear windows is coming loose. It's not in danger of falling off, but it's loose. I could pick it up and shake it, and it's unusual because overall the vehicle is extremely high quality. It's one of the things that I've really been impressed with Rivian, that this is basically their first vehicle. I know the R1T technically came out a little bit quicker, but they almost simultaneous release the first gen R1S and R1Ts, and I have a very early build. It's been rock solid, quality wise, many levels above the first couple of generations of Teslas, would compare it to, because they're a new car company coming out, and like Rivian was. So I've been super impressed with the quality of the Rivian. It's part of why I believe that they're going to make it. As hard as it is for a car company to start and survive, and it's extremely hard. I think that's underestimated by a lot of people. Rivian's still going through a tough period. Even though they're showing some profits now, there's no guarantee they're here. I think they're going to make it. Lucid's still in that period where, like, are they going to make it? But you mentioned they do have the Saudi Wealth Fund with tons of money behind them, kind of propping them up until they can, walk on their own 2 feet. Hopefully they'll get to that. But it's so difficult for car companies. There's the reason why so few of them start and actually make it. I have high hopes that Rivian will make it, and this is good to see that they're turning a profit. How long have we heard people in the comments and different social media forums and so forth saying, "Oh yeah, great, cars, but they lose $87,000 for every vehicle they sell," and that's no way to run a company. Well, that's just how it works when it's a new car company. No car company today is going to start making a profit from the first car they start selling. Okay, how much they sell it for. So that's just the way that the industry works. So this is great to see. I don't really care if they get the money from selling licensing software or from ZEV credits. It's money. It's coming into the company. I never really cared about that with Tesla. Yeah, everybody always threw that in your face. Yeah, but without the ZEV credits, they'd be losing money. Yeah, but there's not without the ZEV credits. They have the ZEV credits. It's revenue coming in, and that affects their whole business strategy. Perhaps if that revenue wasn't coming in, they would have had a different strategy, and maybe that would have changed things. So they bank on that because they know that it's there. So yeah, I mean, this is great, Martin. Good news. I hope they continue. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see continued profitable quarters. They're kind of in that period now where they might make money, lose money, make money, lose money. But at least they've gotten their head above water, at least for this period of time, which is really a good sign for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Isaiah, can you talk us through? So Tom made a really good point about losing money on every vehicle. Rivian managed to cut over $22,500 from the cost of every R1 they sell. That sounds like a huge number. Can you just talk us through and explain that?
Yeah, so officially with the introduction of the Generation 2 vehicles, which they've helped by reducing high voltage wiring, low voltage wiring, consolidating a lot of their ECUs, and this has at all pretty much helped decrease the cost of production for Rivian. In addition to that, as Rivian progresses as an automaker, of course, they're able to renegotiate some of the contracts that they have with suppliers. Of course, early on, like Tom mentioned, you're a new company and you're going to be losing money on some of those initial vehicles. That is a warning sign for suppliers. They don't want to, dedicate a part of production to their facilities for a company that may not be here in a couple months. And so they end up charging prices that are highly inflated to cover their butts. And so as Rivian ages, they're able to renegotiate some of these contracts. That lowers the total cost of the R1 vehicles. But still to this day, the R1, primarily the dual motor vehicles, seem to not be the most profitable. What's really holding Rivian up is the Rivian commercial van. And that's already contribution margin positive, which means the cost to actually build that vehicle, Rivian is making a profit on that. But the R1, not so much as of yet.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people are very excited about the commercial side of it. Of course, it was Amazon exclusive for a long time, and a big part of their early investment was that faith in the company. That Amazon investment, is that still there? Because I think what with the Slate truck over the last 3 or 4 weeks coming out, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Jeff Bezos is investing in electric vehicles." Well, yeah, Alec, he might be through his own investment fund or whatever personally, but Amazon for a long time had big faith in Rivian. What's the state of that relationship now? Because anyone can get one of those commercial vehicles, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm exactly able to speak on Slate's situation. From my understanding, and I've had conversations with some of the executives there, it's not exactly Amazon, but particularly Jeff Bezos' own personal investment. And of course, Amazon and Rivian do have their own, still have their own relationship. But breaking this exclusivity contract allows Rivian to sell the Rivian commercial van to other companies. And the Rivian commercial van, some of the cost for that was lifted by Amazon. And so Amazon and Rivian came together to work on building this van. And so it's not just solely a Rivian project. And so of course, Amazon wants to protect some of that investment that they've made into Rivian and the Rivian commercial van as a product. But breaking this exclusivity contract allows Rivian to sell to other companies. So we see, for instance, HelloFresh was the most recent company to start buying from Rivian's fleet. We also have Mevco, which is an Australian mining company. We've seen HelloFresh is buying a couple of vans. USPS has been testing vans. It's DHL as well. Of course, Rivian ships the EDV 500 out to Germany, and they have a couple of German service centers there. So if you live in Germany, you may see some Rivian EDVs. But that's definitely going to be a part of business that Rivian's going to need to see grow, because as of right now, not many companies kind of fully investing. You want big partnerships, and Amazon is really their big partnership.
Cool. All right. Now, I'm sure Dom's got some questions about the Rivian R2, $45,000 starting price. Before we move on to that vehicle specifically, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is of note from the financials, or have we covered everything off?
For the most part, yeah, their financials are pretty consistent. They've are pretty much 0% growth over quarter one of 2024 compared to quarter one of 2025. Of course, it's a drop from revenue of quarter four of 2024, but that's also selling less vehicles, less deliveries, primarily contributed to the RCV, them selling less of those in quarter one. But nothing extraordinary when it comes to the financials of Rivian. But when you read the rest of the shareholders letter, especially seeing the first validation builds of R2, this is pretty exciting, because this means we're going to see the R2 on the street, hopefully pretty soon.
Yeah. Dom.
I just had one question before we move on too fast. I just wanted to, off the top of your head, do you know what they did get in ZEV credits this quarter?
I believe it was, I don't have it on top of my head. It was somewhere in the
Sorry.
range of 150 and 220
Okay.
million dollars.
So a significant amount. That's
Right.
That's good. Yeah, that's
significant.
not bad. Right on.
Cool. All right. Dom, you were saying this week, you and I were talking about the Rivian R2. $45,000 is still going to be the starting price. Dom, tell us more about that and anything you want to ask Isaiah.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's I'm not sure if that was in the earnings report. Maybe Isaiah can let us know. But yeah, we learned that the R2 is going to be still $45,000 according to RJ. He said they did lower, but they do have lower guidance on deliveries for the R1 stuff coming up. So because of the tariffs, but yeah, I'm not really sure because everything's moving. Changing so fast with this administration, the tariffs coming in and different like EV penalizations kind of situations. So we don't know, like keeping that price is like kind of significant if they can do it, because a lot of prices, like in the pandemic, the last time we got our economic system got severely disrupted, we saw a huge amount of inflation, and stuff today costs significantly more than it did 5 years ago. So with this thing coming out next year, amidst all this turmoil right now, it looks like they're still going to try to hold that line, and I think that's a good thing, because it needs to be. I mean, that's a good starting price for this product, I think, basically.
Incredible. Yeah, like an amazing starting price. Did they talk, Isaiah, about how they're achieving this to stay on the 45 grand? Because it's almost like a comedy thing now. Like with other car makers, certainly with Tesla, they get forgiven for it because they've got such a huge fan base. But they're, hey, we're going to launch a vehicle at this price, and they never hit it. And they did with the 35 grand. Model 3. It was a bit nerfed, but they did it. But ultimately other vehicles haven't even arrived, whereas it'd be easy to go, well, it's going to be 48 or maybe 49. So did Rivian talk about how they're going to hit this 45k price point?
For quite some time, they've been talking about it, but without the tariffs. And since we've started to see the introduction of tariffs, they haven't really delved into what their strategy is there, other than confirming that the starting price will still be $45,000. But scaling the factory, as well as they've already sourced about 95%, at this point probably 99% of their bill of materials for the R2, and they say that that's less than half the cost of their R1 vehicles. And so that's largely going to help make sure that R2 is profitable, and helping that they're kind of keeping the price low enough to have that $45,000 starting price. But it's also just part of scale. Right now, Rivian's factory at max producing about 50,000 vehicles per year. That factory can produce over 200,000. And so you're only using a quarter of your factory's capacity. And once you start scaling, you bring in R2, you maybe scale up R1 and RCV more. Then you start to see some costs be reduced with scale. It's economies of scale of sorts.
And I'm sure the 45,000 starting price, we see what's on the market today and what it costs. And, Rivian doesn't have some sort of a inside track on building things for cheaper than everybody else. That's, going to be a version that probably very few of us can even get, like the basic $45,000 version, if it comes at that. Creta commented that with options it's going to pull it over 70k. I'm sure you can option it up over 70k, but I bet that typical pricing for it with fairly well optioned is going to be a little between 65,000. We'll see, but it's hard to imagine this vehicle being able to be on the market in the for under $50,000. It's great on Rivian if they're able to do it, but I think that version, if they sell one for 45,000, is going to be a very, very, stripped down, decontented version of it. Which some people hopefully will be able to order. But we've seen this with other automakers where they offer the base model at X price, and it's like it's sure, if you order one, we'll probably get around to making that version in 2 to 3 years. So give us your deposit, and but if you want one that's 10 grand more, you can have it in 3 months. And I'm not accusing Rivian of doing anything differently than what everybody does. And that's just the industry. But I mean, I paid over 90,000 for my R1S, so this is basically a short version of the R1S, and I know it has a lot less and it's smaller, but it's hard for me to imagine them making a vehicle that seems similarly appointed as far as the materials used and so forth, and how it looks for half price. I know they've cut their production. I mean their manufacturing costs and so forth, but still, look at what's on the market right now for 45k, and then look at this, and it seems much more premium and offering a lot more than what we get from other automakers at 45k.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Tom. For sure, we're definitely going to see the $45,000 R2 that's going to be like a rear-wheel drive, smaller battery pack. I won't be surprised if Rivian removes a ton of the options, especially in the version that we see of R2 today, that prototype that was running around. And yeah, I definitely think we're going to see the all-wheel drive dual-motor version first. I don't think we'll really be seeing the rear-wheel drive and even the Tri until Georgia, or at very earliest late 2027. But yeah, that all-wheel drive, probably larger battery pack, above 55,000, probably touching $70,000 once you option it up.
How many battery pack options will they have for the R2?
So they haven't given us an exact detail of what that's going to look like, but it would probably follow along the same lines of R1, that being a standard battery pack, a large, and then a max pack.
Okay.
Talking of Maximus is their new drive unit. RJ was kind enough to share I think three social media updates in a row. So talk us through what he posted, because it's been online on Threads showing us R2 motors and pilot production lines and Maximus drives, and what did he share?
Yeah, so he's shown us pictures of R2 pilot production as well as the Maximus motors, which is funny. I believe his son's name is Maximus as well.
Oh, there we go.
So kind of naming of your son here. But yeah, so we have the Enduro motor, which goes in the dual motor Rivians. Then we have the Ascent. The Ascent, not to be mistaken with Ascend. Ascend is the trim in the tri-motor Rivians. But Ascent with a T, that is the motor that goes in the tri-motor vehicles. That's the drivetrain that goes in the rear of the tri, and will also be the two drivetrains that will go in the quad motor. And then the Maximus is pretty much a slimmed down, smaller version of the Enduro, and that's going to go in the rear of the rear-wheel drive. Of course, it'll be the dual for the all-wheel drive, and then as well as go in the front for the tri-motor version of the R2.
So this picture that we have on the screen is like it's kind of like a messy looking sort of the rear axle. I guess it could be the front axle. There's a really messy looking axle there with a motor on it, and so there's some suspension. And some people were mentioning different things about what they could see. Like it's got a really beefy looking sway bar. Any other things that we can take away from this picture? I think someone mentioned like something about the suspension. Did you see anything about that, Isaiah?
Yeah, I guess I'm not a huge aficionado when it comes to the technicals of this. I imagine
Sure.
you guys would have more of the idea. I feel like I'm looking at a box of wires here. But
Right.
especially connected to the coil suspension or spring suspension, it seems that it will be adaptive in some sense. But other than that, this gives us a full view of what that drivetrain for R2 will be.
Right on.
Nice. Tom, have you got a reservation or a deposit in on this?
No, I haven't.
It's interesting because you do a lot of vehicles. Just on
I
the
do
off
a lot
chance.
of I do a lot of vehicles, but I bought 2 Rivians already.
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
it's not that I don't like them. It's not that I don't like the R2 or the R3. Actually, I'd really love to have. But I do also, with what I do for a living here, I want to try to spread it out and get vehicles from different automakers and so forth. It's I don't have out of spec budget where I can have 40 cars in my driveway. So I need to pick and choose with what I get. And it's not that I wouldn't want one. It's just I have to weigh that against, well, what's the best choice for me to go at right now, And I mean, ideally, the next truck / SUV vehicle that I get will be like like a Slate or a Tello or something like that. That's small and from a new, interesting brand. I'm not saying that I'm through Rivian by any means. I love their vehicles, great vehicles, but I always have to not just consider getting a vehicle for me and the wife to drive, but also for content and so forth. And I'm 2 Rivians in, and I want to spread the love around a little bit.
No, that's kind of you.
I think your next pickup truck's going to be like a Ford Ranger EV. I'm just saying.
If that's the case, that means I'm not buying a truck for a long time.
Well, that's like one of the Skunk Works one, isn't it? Like, isn't that like a 2028?
But Ford's really letting their foot off the pedal on new electric models.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think electric Ford's going to be my next purchase. Not that I wouldn't. I would if it was available. I don't think they're coming, Dom. I don't think they're coming for a while. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did see that they canceled that that little architecture project they had, like how Rivian has their zonal architecture.
Yeah.
I think they were working on the equivalent, kind of similar kind of thing as that, and they just canceled that program.
They hired Doug
FNV4.
Field to lead that team. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but they hired Doug Field to lead that team and develop this whole new next generation architecture. I went to Detroit and talked to Ford about this. They were so excited when they first assembled this team. This is going to bring us into the next decade and everything. And now, no, it's too hard. We can't do it. We can't make it work with both our fully electric products and our combustion products. So we're going to split things up.
But
I'm
it did sound
concerned
like
with Ford.
Yeah.
It did sound like they were going to, with that cancellation, they were going to instead put that project on to the Skunk Works team and let them develop it, from the ground up on that platform over there, and then just modify what they have now instead of doing a whole revamp, which is kind of wild considering the amount of money they invested in that program. And like Doug Fields makes like $18 million a year or something like that last year.
Yeah,
And that's a lot of money.
They're definitely. I think Ford is a little gun shy right now because they went in real heavy into EVs, 4 years ago or so when they really, I mean, the Mustang Mach-E was supposed to be a compliance vehicle that really wasn't anything special, just to, get ZEV credits. And then they said, no, let's make a real electric vehicle. Let's give it a Mustang. Let's make it something exciting that people want to drive. And then let's fully electrify our cornerstone vehicle, the F-150, and poured a ton of money into that. Sales haven't been where they had wanted them to be or where they needed them to be to continue down this path. So now everything is getting pushed down the road. And, we've heard this new T3, the next generation pickup truck, which I've talked to Jim Farley about on a number of occasions. He's told me, Tom, you're going to, wait till you see this truck, you're going to want to trade your Lightning and immediately for it. And, then now that's been delayed and there's no guarantee that it won't be delayed again. And, so they're really kicking the can down the road with their fully electrified program. It's unfortunate to me, but I think they feel gun shy with starting the whole Model E division and getting so browbeaten by the dealership network and the National, Association of Auto Dealers, or the Dealership Association. They got sued so much into submission they had to give up and stop that whole sales model where they were going to have set pricing and all the dealers were going to have a concierge service picking up vehicles and delivering to people's house, so you would never had to go to the dealership. All the dealerships had to have DC fast chargers, all this stuff. All that got torn down, and they're just I think they're just trying to figure out how they're going to proceed with electrification. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at with Ford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was I think called FNV4, Fully Networked Vehicle 4.
Right.
I'm not quite sure on the timeline of it. I certainly read a really good article with one of the tech publications, something like The Verge, on Monday with Doug Field. Doesn't give many interviews, doesn't have to, but he did, saying how they're killing their networked vehicle architecture and going to call it FNV 3.x, and it's going to be on combustion cars and EVs. They're still going to have these kind of modules that are mini brains that do siloed functions, but then connect to kind of central brains. A hybrid, a halfway house. He was selling it as, well, he has to, of course, there's no other way of selling it, as a great solution. Then I saw on FordAuthority.com, whether this was the timeline, but it was how I read it in that order. Someone who's really helped out this podcast into background information and stuff, called Emma Berg, who's a spokesperson for Ford, so knowledgeable. She gave a statement to Ford Authority to say, we haven't killed FNV4. It's still coming with the Skunk Works thing. Whether that was a clarification after Doug, obviously she can't say he got it wrong, and he didn't get it wrong. But the timeline I read it in was like, no, we haven't killed it. It's still coming with the new. And just in the order that I read that, I was like, oh man, Ford used to be really detailed in this is where we're going. And like Tom says, here's the roadmap and here where we are. I can't imagine how difficult that is to keep shareholders happy, to make decisions that impact tens of thousands of people's pensions and livelihoods. You get it wrong, and massive implications. So it must be very hard. But I think Ford have certainly got some definitely challenges. In terms of that, Isaiah, did they talk about that much at all? Because the Volkswagen thing was a really big deal. Obviously, one of the world's biggest automakers at times, the biggest, depending on sales numbers over the years, coming to what is effectively a startup to say, help us do software. We tried it with Cariad. They haven't got rid of that, but some say it even cost a CEO a job, their software failings and Cariad. And certainly people have left that bit of the business. So Volkswagen saying, we're going to come to you for help. Did they talk much in this particular earnings thing about that Volkswagen and that Volkswagen deal, what happens next with it?
They haven't in this or most recent earnings call, but in previous earnings calls they have. And clearly they are actively working on this. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn, they are posting new jobs through the joint venture every single day. I believe they were just hiring for someone to focus on their over-the-air updates system. And so this clearly is a relationship that Volkswagen and Rivian are actively having and are continuing to see progress through both companies. Of course, these will help through economies of scale. decrease the cost of Volkswagen and Rivian vehicles through software because they're able to share so many parts and share so much technology. But I do find it interesting how such large OEMs are having to go to these startups, and even for hardware like Lucid and Aston Martin going to Lucid for certain technology, going to these startups because they seem to really know what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Of course, Volkswagen and Rivian want to sell this. They want this to be a product that they sell to other companies, whether that be a Ford or a Nissan or a Honda, whoever. And so it'll be interesting to see what other companies try to collaborate between the joint venture.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on, I got one more question. Anyone in the comments or watching this live want to leave a comment for Isaiah before we do last 5 minutes on Rivian? Leave your question or comment now, and we can put them to him. He is the authority, the expert on all things. Before we get to those, what's the deal with this supplier park that we heard of this week as well? To have all the bits that you need to build the vehicles made within a stone's throw of their normal facility.
Right. So this is actually something that Rivian's been working on for a couple months at this point. And we've already reviewed the permits and we've known what Rivian's kind of been working on. But this is the most recent announcement we've seen from the state of Illinois, the city of Normal and Bloomington, and then Rivian themselves. And so this supplier logistics park is going to be a place where suppliers can not only store, but it seems even build and construct parts for R1 and R2. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns for Rivian as a whole. I mean, Tom was kind of talking about service. My Rivian is currently in service. It'll probably be in service until the end of the month. The logistics of having so many parts, right? They're currently building about 50,000 vehicles. That's going to be increased to 200,000, 150 of that being R2. They're going to have to dial in to production, scaling, and then for those that need service, right, those extra parts, shipping them out to service centers. You're going to need a lot of more parts. There's a lot of suppliers and contracts that they have with other OEMs. They're going to help build R2, and so this is definitely going to be a part in helping that. But I'm hoping to see this be built soon.
I think this speaks to the confidence that the business community or the supplier community has maybe in Rivian now, that it's going to be a going concern, because this is like sort of like the opposite of vertical integration. Now they're starting to lean on outside companies, and then those outside companies are now going to assume some amount of risk, right? If like Rivian is like their main customer and they've built their shop right there, investing that money, and that their one customer doesn't come through or needs to chop what they're paying them, it's a whole different situation now. And it's something that I think a lot of upstart companies, you can't ask a supplier to set up shop next to you unless they have a lot of confidence that you're going to be a going concern basically in the future.
Yeah, interesting, good stuff. All right, do you want to stick around for the rest of the podcast?
Yes, I will.
Hey, nice one. Tom, you got some seat time in a Nissan Aria at 70 miles an hour and one of your famous 70-mile-an-hour range tests this week, and it got pretty close to EPA within about a mile or so. How did it go with the Nissan Aria? What spec, Tom, did you test?
Yeah, so I had the top of the line, the Platinum Plus E-Force with the 87 kilowatt-hour battery. So it was basically the top spec, which typically when we get the cars in the loaner fleets, the manufacturer puts their best foot forward. But that doesn't always mean that's their best range foot forward, because typically the cars have the best range are their two-wheel drive versions, regardless of what brand it is. But they don't typically put those in the loaner fleets because they want you to have their nicest, most well-appointed vehicle. So that's what the Platinum Plus E-Force was. EPA, geez, I think it was 257. I forget. Yeah, combined 257. But the highway EPA range rating is 248. And I always cite that because this is a highway range test. Now, Kyle had the same spec vehicle months back, and he did a range test, and it went 240 miles or 242, 243, something like that. And I think it was a little bit colder conditions, or the conditions were a little bit different. So I ended up with 249 miles. Little bit more than he did, but that kind of solidifies that, hey, this spec, you're going to get 240 to 250. in the top spec Aria at 70 miles an hour in, relatively mild conditions. It wasn't super warm out, but it was decent conditions. So, I mean, the Aria is always, it's an odd vehicle to me. It was like the first vehicle announced that was going to be in this type of class. And then Nissan took years for it to come to market. And by that time, we had ID4, we had Mustang Mach-E, Y had been out. There's this is the brutal class for competition. This kind of compact crossover, all electric, category. And I've always tried to figure out, well, where does the Aria slot into it? Like, where does it fit in? We've got Ioniq 5 and EV9, and now we even have Equinox, which is in that, which is kind of like the Equinox is the budget least expensive one. Ioniq 5, EV9 are kind of like, well, these are the vehicles that charge the best. If you maybe live in an apartment complex and you can't charge at home and you're going to rely completely on DC fast charging, maybe that's your go-to because they'll get you to 80% faster than any of the other vehicles in this category. And I guess the Aria is kind of like the, at least this top spec one. I think it's like the premium, feel and finish. It's probably the nicest appointed one of the group. I mean, I guess that's where I would put it in if I was going to make an argument for why would you buy an Aria. It's expensive. It doesn't have great range. It doesn't charge that well. I mean, it has a peak charging rate of 130 kilowatts. Now everybody goes, oh my God, that must be horrible. It's actually not that bad. I'm going to have a charging video coming out soon. It doesn't charge that poorly at all because it jumps up to 130 kilowatts and just holds it. So, it'll charge better than a car that it goes up to 200 kilowatts for 10 minutes. And then it's down to 80 kilowatts at 50% state of charge, which we see that, it's all about the charging curve. It's not about peak charging. So surprisingly, it's not a bad charging electric vehicle. It's not great, but I charged from 0 to 80% in 36 minutes. And that's not 10 to 80 or 20 to 80, 0 to 80 in 36 minutes. While Nissan states its 10 to 80% charge time is 40 minutes. So I was able to go to 0 to 80 faster than what they claim on their website the 10 to 80 is. And that's because I also noticed that the battery is very temperature sensitive. I did multiple chargings, and if the temperature wasn't just right, you can precondition the battery, but if you don't precondition it long enough, you don't get fast enough charging either. I did a 10 to 80% once just to see their 40-minute claim. And that took it took actually like 45 seconds less than my 0 to 80% charging session did because the battery wasn't perfectly warm. And this wasn't in the dead of winter. It was like 50 degrees out. So the battery wasn't that cold, but that's how much of a difference it makes if you don't have the battery at the right temperature. It allows you to precondition. I had the preconditioning on for like a half an hour. That still wasn't long enough. I think they say that you should have it on for up to an hour to actually get it to the right temperature. But unless it's an hour drive to the charging station, you're not going to have preconditioning on for an hour. I went to one far away knowing it would be 45 minutes. I figured, by then it'll be warm enough, but it wasn't. So not a bad vehicle. I like the Aria. It's not bad. I hate the user experience though. Their infotainment system, everything about it seemed to me to be counterintuitive. I didn't like how you go through different screens to find different options or whatever. It was to me, and it could be just me, maybe my brain is wired for a different type of a user experience, but I didn't like it at all. But I did like the whole fit and finish. I love the interior. I thought it was super comfortable. I love how the center console moves forward and backward. It's a power sliding center console. You can adjust it to wherever you'd like it to be. The only negative with that is it doesn't have storage in the center console. It's just an armrest. I guess because it's like a motor that moves it back and forth. There's a little compartment that could fit like 2 cell phones, and that's it when you lift the armrest up. So I guess the rest, because it's on that track sliding, you lose that. But other than that, super comfortable. I really like the dashboard. I like the layout. But again, that's all my particular taste. I still try to figure out when I look at that whole market, the Model Y, the Ioniq 5, EV9, Equinox, Mustang Mach-E, ID4, then you put the Aria in there. You say, okay, which buyer is buying the Aria? I can kind of figure out where a lot of the other vehicles are going to fall. Like who's going to be their prime customer? But I just don't get that with the Aria, which is unfortunate. It's not a bad vehicle. It doesn't do anything exceptionally, but it does a lot of things pretty good. And that's probably the best I could say about it. The range isn't acceptable for 87 kilowatt hours, usable. It only goes 250 miles at 70 miles an hour. It charges okay. It's would I tell somebody don't buy one? Absolutely not, because I enjoyed my time with it, but it's hard for me to recommend it over some of the other options that we have out there today.
Yeah. Look at that consumption, 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour. That is the key number, right? That's just nowhere near writing home about like that.
And Kyle averaged 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour when he did his. Yeah. So you're gonna average, just split it down the middle. At 70 miles an hour, you're gonna average about 3 miles per kilowatt hour.
Man.
So Cicero, one of our regular viewers, owns an Aria, and he's saying that driving dynamics are on the Platinum at least is very good. Like the E4 system, did you enjoy that part? Do you think?
Yeah. I thought it drove well, super comfortable. I love the interior layout. I mentioned that. I think it perhaps is the nicest of any of the vehicles in that class. I'd have to sit in all of them side by side, but my memory serves me correct. I really enjoyed the cabin, the whole experience of the cabin, other than the infotainment system. I'm sure I could get used to it, but that's not how I judge, how well infotainment systems work. I review a lot of vehicles. I want to be able to fully understand how to navigate through everything really quickly. And I think that means it's designed well. When you don't have to learn it. It doesn't take you a month to learn where everything is and how to use everything. And I kind of felt like that even after the week with the Aria, I still wasn't comfortable with like looking for things in the settings and so forth. It just didn't flow to me, if that makes sense.
So, what's the big problem with the Aria? Is the price then, basically?
It's expensive. It's expensive, yeah.
Okay.
If you look at it, compare it, with the other vehicles in that class, Equinox at the bottom as far as price wise. Look at all those vehicles I just mentioned. It's at the higher end if you want to compare features and options to the other vehicles, and you could do that if like it had 50 more miles of range than a Mustang Mach-E, a comparable one, if it charged faster or charged as well as the EGMP cars, and say, well, look what you're getting for that money. It charges great. It goes farther. It's got a beautifully laid out interior. It's got all this stuff, but it just doesn't. It does everything okay. And it seems like the price point is just a little bit higher than what some of the competition is that offer the same level of features.
Mega. All right, let's move on. 2 comments to get to. One from during the week in the comments section. One from today, and that's Urban. Thank you very much, Urban, for leaving us a question for Isaiah, asking, and thank you for your contribution as well. Thank you. Any updates from Rivian on expanding into Europe, offering R1T and R1S here? Also about their Serbian offices. And guys, keep up the great job. Well, we're not great, and it's not a job, but thank you very much. We appreciate the compliment. What are your thoughts, Isaiah, on that?
No, unfortunately not. I wish they would. And of course, Rivian have offices in Serbia as well as the United Kingdom, and I believe Belgium as well. But really no chance that we will see the R1T or R1S there, unfortunately. Although I think would be a really good product for a lot of Eastern European markets. We will likely see R2 very end of 2026 or by 2027 in Europe. Rivian has already said that the first European units will be coming from the Norma, Illinois factory. So you guys will be getting R2 pretty soon, but R1T, R1S, unfortunately not. And we do have the RCV there in Germany as well. So you get that.
Yeah, good shout.
And the R3, of course, is like perfect for Europe, right?
Yeah, but 2028 at the earliest. That's
just killing me, that timeline. I can't move past it. It's like, is it sorry to just interrupt the flow of things for a second, but Isaiah, do you think are they just being risk averse by not, trying to raise money or do something to just get that plant, that factory in Georgia just going?
I think they see the success of a lot of the midsize SUVs, particularly the Model Y, and an R3 might not do as well as an R2, so it might make more sense to just focus on R2 and
Okay.
dedicate any increased production that you have in normal to R2, and then they'll bring R3 on into Georgia, and then we may see a European factory as well in the future. That'll be R3 as well.
Yeah. All right, we look
Right.
forward to it. Okay, before we get to the Jeep Compass, we got this great comment last week that we wanted to share in response to our discussion about a new $250 federal tax on EVs that was being proposed. And we'll share that comment with you right now. It's a bit of a wordy one, so we will get through this together. But it's an incredible comment. Hi, guys. Great show as usual. You happen to repeat what I strongly feel is misinformation, often put forth by EV opponents, discussing the new, unfair, punitive EV federal tax on EVs being proposed by backbench congressman. You mentioned that EVs can cause more pavement damage than ICE cars. While this is literally true in practice, the difference is insignificant. Pavement designers don't even count light trucks and cars in their calculations because the overwhelming preponderance of damage is caused by large, heavy trucks. As an analogy, you can say that a dragonfly is louder than a housefly, but next to a jet engine, it doesn't matter. I can speak authoritatively on this topic. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer who holds a PhD, nearly 40 years of professional experience specializing in pavement and materials engineering. Prior to my retirement in 2014, I was the state pavement design engineer. That is actually a thing for a state Department of Transportation for over a decade, and have either performed or supervised designs on several thousand projects worth billions of dollars. My old agency owns most of the roads in my state, totaling over 41,000 centerline miles and ranging from unsurfaced rural roads to urban interstates, and I have worked on an array of road types. I had a former colleague who used to say that cars are about width while trucks are about depth. What he was saying is that cars and light trucks are what control the number of lanes on most projects, while large, heavy trucks control the pavement thickness. Even the heavier Silverado EV or Hummer EV doesn't weigh enough to matter. EV owners should not be paying more than ICE owners for similar vehicles for damage to infrastructure. Well, as we know these days, experts are not in vogue anymore, but it's wonderful that we have an expert listening to our podcast. And what an amazing comment. Like, we absolutely adore listeners like this for leaving something thoughtful and just wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's pretty authoritative sounding too, right? I mean, and it makes sense. And think about it. We really do in the general, discussion of this thing, like not just here, but like everywhere you see this. This is not like just us talking about, EV weights as because of the tax coming in for EVs. People are thinking about the weights and how they damage the roads. So like they always think of the money for these taxes going towards road improvements, and roads get degraded by weight, but not necessarily the weight of our regular passenger cars. It's not really a big factor, I guess.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There you go.
Seems like the damage gets done by the real heavy vehicles. It's not the cumulative effect of a lot of lighter vehicles that are on the heavy side. It's the real damage is by the very heavy, 5-ton, 8-ton vehicles driving down the road. Not even 5-ton, more than that.
Like dump trucks,
the dump trucks and so forth that are carrying 50, 60,000 pounds. I mean, those are the ones that seem to create the big difference. And I don't think that this proposed $250 annual fee is based on any real data or information, or even tethered to reality in any fashion, other than it being a punitive fee. I think that with the administration shift, there's previous administration had been very pro EVs, willing to expand the tax credit, install charging, do the NEVI, and now the scale's got to go completely the other way. I mean, that's what our politics are here in the U.S. There's no middle ground. It's you're 100% behind something, or you hate it and it's the devil. And that's what we've shifted to now. So I believe what we'll get out of this administration, as much as possible, is anti-electric vehicle legislation. And this is a punitive. This is, you like EVs, but so you're on the other side of the aisle. You're going to pay. We're going to punish you. There's no other way to put it. That's what our politics has been reduced to now. It's you're on my team or you're not on the other side. You're the enemy, because that's what we are now. We're not, we're not friends that, live together and have different ideas and just, want to live peacefully. You're either on my team or I want you dead. It's horrible, but that's what it seems what we have, gone into here in this country. And I think that this is part of that the current administration just wants to punish electric vehicles because the previous administration was trying to endorse them. And that had to be bad because you're on the other team. So now you're going to pay. They should just leave it up to the states. We talked about this last week. The best thing that we could do is do like a mileage based where all the vehicles of any type of fuel pay by mile. I think that's the best. I don't know if we're going to get that. So short of that, leave it up to the states to decide what they want to do. New Jersey already put in a relatively punitive EV tax, which I'm paying here now. I think it started at $250 2 years ago, and every year it goes up $10. So I think I'm in $260 a year now. Next year, $270, then $280. I think it stops at $280 or $290 a year. So right now, I own 4 electric vehicles. I'm already paying over $1,000 a year on road tax and for this EV tax. And there's no way I couldn't possibly buy enough gas to pay $1,000 in gasoline tax. If I bought, a car from the 70s that got 6 miles per gallon and drove it 35,000, 40,000 miles a year, I wouldn't pay $1,000 in tax. So I'm already being punished way more than any gasoline vehicle would be punished. So if this gets tacked on top of it, the 250, that's another $1,000 a year. I'll be paying like $2,400 a year in tax just because I own 4 electric cars. So it's there's the only way to look at it is that it's punitive, Tom. It's not. This isn't truthful or fair by any means. It's punitive.
Yeah.
And the next administration, if we have one, will probably get rid of it. So
yeah. Well, let's hope so.
That's pretty dark there, Tom. If we have one,
but let's keep it fair and equitable, and either do it by
very
mileage
down on what's going on here in our country. But it is
but
what it is.
If I think if you want to make it the same as combustion, that's fine, or just do it in a new way that's fair. That no one can complain. No EV driver is saying that we should be given special treatment. So, and also I say we, it shouldn't even be tribal, like we and them. Anyway, let's move on. So, the all-new Jeep Compass debuted this week. We can show you some pickies on screen in a moment. Jeep is starting production with an EV version, but the plug-in hybrid is still to come. Also making a mild hybrid version, but don't worry about that. Originally, their plan was to sell it in the United States, but tariffs, so it will be made in Italy. The US plan is technically not killed, it's on pause. This is what I get over here in Europe. So from the mothership Stellantis, they've got a platform, STLA Medium, which this is built upon. So nothing really groundbreaking here that we didn't know already. It's a little shorter than an Ioniq 5. There's a front-wheel drive version with 213 horsepower. There's an all-wheel drive version that adds another, a motor to add 375 horsepower in total. It's a little bit capable on some soft roading. The all-wheel drive version gets about a 10 mil raise, and so a bit of a raise on that. A couple of battery sizes. 74 kilowatt hour battery, so that is a 30 minutes charge, and there's also going to be a bigger battery as well. I want to say it's not in the notes. I want to say like 97 kilowatt hour. So Peugeot, obviously you have the Peugeot E3008, E5008, and the big battery on that is going to do you, it's just under 100 kilowatt hours, like 424 or 434 miles. It's a big range beast. And so again, same technology underpinning this, and that one as well, about 28-30 minutes. 10 to 80 charge on that 22 kilowatt onboard charger. Maximum range on this one's a little lower than the Peugeot. This is 404 miles. All new Jeep Compass, smaller than what our US audience might think in their mind's eye is a Compass. And we'll wait and see if this one is a hit with European buyers, which is where it will go on sale first of all. Good segment, though. Isaiah, you were talking about various segments and Rivian are looking at profitability. This kind of segment over here, this is doing, obviously, this is what everyone wants to drive at the minute, vehicles like this. I think Rivian have got a bit of competition already with at least what looks like a chunky, leisure vehicle that could perhaps do some more off-roady trail stuff. It won't have the trail credibility of a Rivian. It's not designed to do that. But yeah, this is an important segment. Isaiah, what do you reckon of this?
I think this is super cool. I'm looking forward to the Recon, like the electric Wrangler that was supposed to be, I feel like, out by now. But clearly, I mean, we've seen what's happened with the Daytona, the Dodge Charger Daytona, as well as the Wagoneer S. But hopefully Jeep can start to kind of catch their footing. Of course, in Europe, they're doing a lot more in the electric vehicle game, Stellantis as a whole. But yeah, I like the design a lot.
Yeah, I like this. This is nice. This would be a very popular segment as well. So,
what's the buzz like over there for Jeep now? I know they sold like 80,000 Avengers already over there. We don't get that thing here, but it's a smaller version of this kind of, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Avenger is actually really small. When you see it on the road, it looks like a mini Countryman, and of course, minis have got really big as well, or a BMW iX1. So, the Avenger's done really well. Jeep is a thing here. Just not much of a thing. So if I say to the average person in the street, it's a Jeep, they're going to think of a Wrangler. They're going to think of a World War II vehicle, a Land Rover style, old school thing with like a drop window at the front and whatnot. So Jeep is a thing. They are on sale here. They just don't sell many, but they have got a perception of being off-road utility vehicles, whereas of course Stellantis are dipping into the parts bin and making a Jeep version of a Peugeot E. Is this the $308 or $508 competitor? But either way, both battery sizes is going to go into this. Big miles, and we'll see. I mean, and don't get me wrong, they do lean in. They know that they've got that perhaps outdated image that Jeeps are off-road vehicles, and they do lean into it with the styling, but also with their marketing as well, and suggesting it can do a little more than maybe it can. But yeah, I think this would be very interesting to see if this sells well. I like the look of it too. That's nice.
It's very nice.
I love how it looks. I think it looks great. Do we know if for sure it's going to come to US, or if it's not? Have they commented on that?
I think it's still on pause, Tom.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because
they didn't.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I didn't see anything mentioned in any of the press releases about the US anymore. But in the past, I believe they said it was coming to the US. The Avenger was going to be in Europe, and then everything else is going to be everywhere. And then with the tariffs, I think they said they were going to reevaluate, and then I think that's been radio silence on that front since then.
They're reevaluating. What's the size of this? Do we know? Is it like, how is it compared to like a BZ4X? So, Subaru
it's probably
Solterra?
Similar size to that, right?
Is that the size, or is it smaller?
It's like 4 inches shorter than a Ioniq 5, maybe 8 inches shorter than the Model Y, 8 to 10 inches shorter than the Model Y. So it's a little bit smaller, but it's not like compact. It's a lot bigger than, say, the Hyundai Kona Electric. It's still good. It's a fair amount larger than that.
Okay.
That interior looks pretty sweet. Look at the bolsters on those seats, like the side bolsters.
Yeah,
this looks like a sports car.
I think it looks great. I wonder how the infotainment system, how the UX is going to be though. Like that's always not Stellantis' strong point. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm also being reminded of the Citroën C5 Aircross and the Opel/Vauxhall Grandland. Yeah, it's a good shout, actually. So all similar vehicles. All right, well, a vehicle that we do know what the size is, and that's the Tesla Model Y. Now we have the cheaper version in the US as well. So that's a great way to get into the vehicle. $44,990 in the US for 357 miles of range. This is Model Y rear-wheel drive, long range, of course, which is great. We like anything that gets you into a car cheaper. And you do get a lot of car for your, $45,000, 357 miles of range, and that new one is now on sale, which is great. You can go spec your new long-range rear-wheel drive. There are some offers on this. There are some really good offers on inventory Model Ys, by the way. Many countries do have a ton of Model Y inventory, and you get some stellar deals on those. If you're going to buy one, now's a good time. Maybe wait till the end of the quarter. I don't know. You can always often get better deals in the last. If your finances are all sorted and you want to buy a Tesla, I always say wait till the last 2 weeks of the quarter. You won't get a better deal, apart from the last 2 weeks of the year, maybe, than if you just wait and keep your powder dry. As long as you're ready to go, you can get some great deals. Either free supercharging, low interest rates as they try and hit their targets, and so. But this is also a good deal as well. So.
With the federal tax credit, it comes down to. What is it? $37,490, and then they also have an offer right now where they're selling them at $199 APR for like financing, or I think you can also get $2,000 off instead of the lower financing rate. So it's basically like close to a $35,000 Model Y. It's kind of like a great deal, but it's also I feel like it's like also a big sign of trouble at Tesla because. I mean, the Model Y this refresh just launched. They just started making deliveries in March. I think they were taking orders January 25, and then the first part of March they started making deliveries, and they just had that first launch vehicle, right, with the price up in the 60,000s with the loaded model, everything on it. And I don't think that sold that well because it didn't take that long. They were selling the regular. Just all-wheel drive Model Y, and then it's less than 2 months since they started making deliveries, and now they're offering this. And I just saw an article yesterday. I think it was on Car Scoops. I didn't have a chance to really verify it, so it's on Car Scoops. But they're saying there's like a ton of like the original launch vehicle still unsold in inventory.
Oh, really?
Which is it's kind of troubling, I mean,
We've never seen that with Tesla. Never seen that with Tesla.
Right.
And the interesting thing is here, I saw the first one that I've seen in New Jersey on the road 2 days ago. And I can remember like every model that Tesla's launched, even Cybertruck, I immediately saw them in the area, like on the roads, they were there. And this, has been available for, a month or so, and I still didn't see one. So it was interesting to me that, I'm used to when a new Tesla comes out, a refresh or whatever, a new model, I immediately see them around here, and that wasn't the case with this. So it's a little surprising because, it is an overall great value. It's an excellent car in its class. When you put it up against the other vehicles in this class, just as being a vehicle, you get a tremendous value with Model Y. It goes far, it charges fast. It doesn't have the, let's say, most premium interior. It's very Spartan, but a lot of people don't mind that, but you get a lot with Model Y for the money, and you would expect it to sell more. I mean, it's clearly a sign of the times and how very many people's opinions of Tesla have changed in the last 6 to 8 months.
That's interesting, isn't it?
When people are selling your cars because they don't want to be associated with the brand, that's a bad sign, to me. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I guess, all brands have conquest bonuses and stuff. It's not particularly new. People get a bit outraged when they see them. Has Rivian had any deals, Isaiah, to get Tesla fans to come over to the Rivian side?
So they have this like $3,000 like trade-in offer, and many people have been like touting it as like a Tesla offer, but it's for pretty much any vehicle. I believe now it's for any EV. But I believe there is now like a lower interest rate introduction, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of deals for the rest of the year for R1. So there'll definitely be something to look out for.
All right, that's cool. Things on my podcast this week on EV News Daily, we have been talking about the various I think, challenges that Tesla have been having. We've got the April numbers coming out as well. And we only mention that because for a long time they were, the benchmark for the industry. So this isn't, occasionally I get an email from a Tesla fan being like, you said a bad thing about Elon Musk, I'm not listening anymore. And I'm like, I'll try and sleep well tonight knowing that. Like, it's not a personal thing, but if you think we're focusing on this, it's because for so long, and in some markets as well, they still are the EV industry. And so, we're not, there's no one's gleeful that Tesla, I mean, some people are obviously gleeful that Tesla is having some real issues at the minute, but delivery numbers in Europe for April, because a lot of countries do publish their own monthly data, everyone was saying, look, Q1's going to be a write-off. Forget it. Like the analysts, the markets, the share people and the stock prices. Don't worry about it. April, the Model Y hits Europe. It's going to be gangbusters again. Tesla sales in Europe hit a 2-year low in April. In the first couple of months of the year, it was down, but I was always told by Tesla fans, look, this is just Model Y. Don't worry. It's nothing to do with any, it's not the CEO factor or, whatever. But we've seen major markets in Europe having really big drops. And again, with Tesla, you've got to smooth it out sometimes over a quarter. But in April, Germany was down 46% year over year when the German EV market was back up again. That's been stagnant for a little bit. The United Kingdom's been the only bright spot for Tesla in Europe. Deliveries were just 512 vehicles. Now, they'll normally do like 1,500 vehicles over here in a month. 62% down. France was down 59% year on year, April to April. Denmark, only 180 vehicles were sold there. 67% down. Sweden crashed 81%. 200 cars were sold there. And then the markets get a bit smaller, like Portugal, Norway, which is kind of the EV leader, as it were. But the numbers have been awful, and so, man, I feel like we bang the drum a little bit too much, but it's really, really important because Tesla are really, really important, and they're having some big issues in Europe at the moment. And I don't see anyone apart from on this show and maybe Electrek, because Electrek have turned a little bit negative on Tesla lately. Like no one else is really talking about this, and yet I think the numbers will come out at the end of the quarter, and then everyone will, clutch their pearls and go, oh, "What happened?" Well, we've been talking about this monthly data. It's a real China's down as well. So, but if you read the likes of all the really great Tesla blogs, the Tesla Arties, and I like Drive Tesla Canada and Tesla North and stuff, they do a really good job reporting it, but I think they're aware that they are obviously preaching to the Tesla fans and their clicks and their revenue and stuff. They're not really talking about this. It is an issue. Yeah. And so, yeah.
I mean, the crazy thing about it, Martin, is they're still great cars. There was a reason why Teslas sold so well for so long and were industry leaders and led the industry and still lead the industry. They make very good cars, very good electric vehicles. They're not perfect. There's things that I like about my Equinox more than I like about a comparable Model Y. Okay. But there's a lot of things that a Model Y does better than my Equinox, so, but the fact that matter is we're seeing their sales just crater, and the vehicles haven't changed. It's not like, well, they put out a new generation of vehicles and they're all of a sudden they're not that good. They're still great cars, and it's amazing to see them take such a hit globally over this, and there's a lot of really shitty CEOs, of companies around the world. It's just, I think we don't know, I don't want to know, I don't want to know that,
just stay out of politics. Just don't bring politics into my life.
The CEO of Lowe's goes to, secret Nazi meetings when I'm buying lumber there. I don't want to know that, let me just buy my wood, keep your politics and your life to yourself. But, Elon's become so public with, his, I guess, true feelings that we didn't know all along, that it's really, I mean, it's, I don't know where Tesla goes from here. And I don't know how they recover from this, short of, getting a new CEO. And I don't know how the company reacts with a new CEO, because he's been such a part of Tesla, and people put their faith in Elon, and, this is a real interesting topic. I have no idea how it's going to play out. It's going to give us a lot of top fodder to discuss over the next year or so.
And just to be clear, the CEO of Lowe's is probably not in any of those
We should have a disclaimer.
meetings. Just
Well,
a
you don't
disclaimer,
know that.
yeah.
He might, Dom.
The CEO of Lowe's just likes to, hug kiss babies and stroke kittens, and he's a lovely lady
Right.
or man or whatever.
That's what you want to see, like, oh, what a great guy. I want to shop at his store. I want to buy his car, like
like
I
RJ
don't want to know. Same thing with like artists. Like
True,
I
right?
don't want to like just sing, please.
Right.
Yeah, don't get involved. I guess what's interesting, because I've obviously got Isaiah on the show today, and you obviously follow RJ Scaringe a lot as well, and he does talk about a lot of his beliefs, but they're not particularly controversial, are they? They're like, we should look after the planet that we live on, and we should try and leave something for the next generation, and all of those things, whichever way you vote. I mean, you can probably guess his leanings, but like they're not particularly controversial, are they? Like, let's just kind of leave a good planet for the next generation, and he does lean into that quite often, actually, that I see.
Yeah, from what I've seen, a lot of I'll be kind of honest here. A lot of the C-suite execs, probably not the way Rivian leans is probably a lot different than how a lot of the leadership leans. But for RJ specifically, he advocates for sustainable energy, and he's a vegan, and these aren't things that are too polarizing for a lot of people. And I do think it may be time for Tesla to see a new CEO of sorts. But again, like Tom said, how is that going to change the direction that Tesla has always been on? And I mean, Elon's been such an instrumental part of Tesla. But I think it's just best if CEOs just kind of keep things quiet, maybe some social jokes here or there, but it's important that you are the face and leadership of a company. People need to see you as a representative of the company, and anything outside of the company can have a bad effect on the business.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, I don't know which way RJ votes. I don't really care. He could,
I don't care.
he's,
I don't care.
he could
Don't
be any of the parties. I don't really care, because just how he presents himself publicly, and just the things he discusses, are all things that and pretty much anyone can get behind, like you say, Martin. Yeah,
but Dom, the
not
interesting
everyone
thing
does.
about this is you could have said that about Elon 3 years ago.
Oh yeah. Oh,
You could have said
yeah,
everything he
mostly,
says is great, and I love he's for sustainability, and
Right.
even extending to the human race to interplanetary civilizations. And my God, this guy is just there's
Right.
there's nothing wrong with him, and then it's boom. It's like
Right.
what did he change? Did like aliens come in and snatch Elon's body, and this isn't
Well,
Elon anymore?
I don't know. I don't know.
Or was he repressing all this all the years, and now because he's a totally different person than
He
what
is
we had
completely
3-4
different.
years ago? You can't
Like,
deny that.
I think I remember on his social channels, I think they turned like his avatar or whatever, like rainbow for pride and stuff like that. And you don't have to. That's not particularly controversial. Do you know what I mean? Like, people can be who they want to be. There will, of course, be a section of the population, whatever. Whereas now, Elon's like the crazy relative on Facebook that's like, I don't even know what toilet to go into these days. Man, woman, I don't know. I don't know why I do that voice every time I do the clickety clackety symbol. And like, we have a channel over here called GB News, which I guess is not analogous to Fox for you guys, but it is just full of outraged, slightly older population. My dad got into it in the last 6 months before he died. It's one of the great things that I was fascinated with. Like, he was saying to me, like, "Oh, son, the country I'm leaving behind to you is full of immigrants," and I'm like, Dad, this is not like you. So it does kind of pull people in, but it's full of people being like, my bins have gone to a 2-weekly collection. I'm disgusted, and I'm like, I don't understand. But that's literally Elon Musk now is just in the comment section of that website article, being like, angry at the world, and you're like, this is not the Elon we knew. But it definitely attracts a lot of people online of a certain, persuasion, or just people that like that kind of that energy, which I don't understand it. I don't get it. But anyway,
I want to have a proposal. Can we promise next week not to go down the Elon vortex and spiral into a discussion about Elon? I know it's hard not to, because it's so important with today's electric vehicle industry and market. But
Right.
we all know where we are with
hear
this
you.
guy at this point. Let's give it a rest for a little while. I'm as guilty as you guys are. But you could see once we start going on this, my blood starts to boil. I'm not happy about discussing this topic. I don't like what's going on, but it's so hard not to. But let's try not to go into that sinkhole.
Well, you know what? I've never seen the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, Ola Kalenius, online saying my bin collection's gone fortnightly from weekly. But I bet he would tell you how people get so
we don't know what
it
means over here. It's a video game, Martin.
Oh, really? Oh, it's because in a lot of places over here they used to collect our bins weekly, and now they come every 2 weeks. And it's
so fortnightly is 2 weeks?
Yeah, like people get really upset, being like, my bins aren't collected weekly. Anyway, insight into how angry people get about their bins over here. But I'm sure he would tell you about the new Mercedes-Benz CLA. We'll finish off on this, and this is I think a bit of a sleeper hit, by the way, the Mercedes-Benz CLA.
Yes,
there is. There is one thing about it that we'll get, particularly Tom's input on this on charging. However, the CLA is an 800-volt new sedan from Mercedes-Benz, and it starts over here in the UK at £45,000. And I think that's rather good. That's about 50,000.
That's really good.
About 50,000 euros. Like I say, it's an 800 volts architecture, and it is, I think, a great-looking car. Now, I also saw online some Mercedes-Benz fans this week saying, Mercedes-Benz has totally lost its way, from making an S-Class, which is a lovely-looking vehicle, to something that is it's meant to be slippery at the front, and that's how they get this incredible efficiency of 5 miles per kilowatt hour. And so I just think this is a great piece of mechanical engineering by Mercedes-Benz, of electrical engineering by Mercedes-Benz. Like I say, it'll do 484 miles on the base model, CLA 250 plus, 484 miles, that's 780 kilometers, on a single charge, and the dual motor version only does 6 miles less because the dual motor disconnects. It's used a lot for regen. I think a regen at 200 kilowatts, so you'll barely touch the brake pedal. But when you need it, it can do all-wheel drive. But if you ask me, just buy the two-wheel drive version. And they haven't brute forced it by just, hummering the battery, or Silveradoing the battery. It's 85 kilowatt hour battery. So it's lightweight and it's efficient. It has a drag coefficient of 0.21. And it's just, they've talked a lot over the last few years at Mercedes-Benz about how they're working on efficiency. And now we see the CLA coming out with all of the fruits of their labor. 800 volt architecture. Massive range. Europe has its own version of the Lucid Air now. I know we get the Lucid in some countries, but we've got that now, right? That big range sedan. There is a sticking point, and that is that it's an 800 volt vehicle without a step-up converter or booster, it's called sometimes. That means, so the battery could be 800 volt nominal, I don't know what it is, but say when you're absolutely at the lowest point, 0% state of charge, it could be 650 volts or 600 volts. Even then, if you turn up to a lot of the DC charging infrastructure that is based on 400 volts, and it says, I need this amount of voltage, can you match it from the charger's going to say, no, I can't deliver that voltage. And so Mercedes-Benz have said, we've taken all the 400 volts infrastructure out of the nav system inside the car, so only go places that we tell you. I don't know, in a pinch, you can't even use one of the old 50 kilowatts that's been in the ground for 10 years. Tom, as our resident charging expert, where do you stand on this?
So I personally would still get the vehicle, but I understand why it would be difficult for other people that understand the charging landscape here in the U.S. Mark Kane over at, and I'm going to give myself a plug here, my website, evchargingstations.com, just a couple days ago posted a great article on the amount of DC fast charging ports here in the U.S. And he pointed out that Tesla currently operates 55% of the DC fast charging ports in the U.S. We have about 55,000 total right now, and Tesla has a little over 30,000. DC fast charging points. Electrify America is the second largest network. They're at about 8%, 8 or 9%. They have about 5,000, a little less than 5,000 ports. Then there's EV Go, then ChargePoint, and EV Connect. So the top 5 networks occupy like 80% of the DC fast chargers in the country, with Tesla having more than half the DC fast chargers in the country. The vast majority, almost nearly all of them, are 400 volt architecture. There's a few that the V4s that are coming out now that Tesla said they're going to be full, full V4 sites. I don't know what Tesla's policy is going to be moving forward. Maybe you guys know. Are they going to continue to install V3s as well as the V4s, or are all of their new sites going to be V4s? Does anybody know that?
No.
I don't know.
Isaiah?
They're still, I mean, from at least Tesla's charging page, they're still installing V3s.
Yeah. Okay.
But those could have been permitted before, and those are always planned to be V3. So,
yeah, it's interesting because you look at the other networks, the other big boys, Electrify America, all their stations are all 1,000 volt architecture. EV Go, the vast majority of their new installs are. Now, some of their sites have 3 or 4 350 kilowatt 1,000 volt stations, and then 1 or 2 400 volt stations on the side that deliver 100 kilowatts. It's kind of a weird layout, but that's what they do. The entire IONNA network, they're going to have 30,000 plugs. If they hit their numbers, by the end of this decade, they'll have as many DC fast charging ports as Tesla currently has now, which is remarkable if you think about it. So what I'm getting at is, while you look at the snapshot of today, and there's no hard data on how many 1,000 volt versus 400 volt stations are out there, but I did some digging on this, and I added up some stations from different networks, and I think a good estimate would be, out of the 55,000 DC fast chargers that are out there right now, between 8,000 and 9,000 are 1,000 volt. So you're looking at 15 to 18%, very low number. However, the new installations are nearly all 1,000 volt. And when we have big players like IONNA and Walmart coming, where all of their systems, I mean, we could potentially, in the next 4.5 years, 5 years, we can have 50 to 60,000 additional DC fast charging ports that are all 1,000 volt. So what I'm saying is, if you can get through the next 2 or 3 years, you might, that 400 volt, 1,000 volt thing might not be as big of an issue.
But we've got to move on, haven't we? We have to move. Technology moves on, Tom. So at some point, we have to cut off the old tech at some point. Exactly.
And I also need to point out the fact that we sometimes put too much stress on DC fast charging. If I didn't do my recordings and so forth, I would use DC fast chargers very infrequently. A lot of my long road trips are for work, aren't for my real life. Even when I drive up to Vermont to my in-laws' house, all my EVs can make that on a single drive now, 220, 240 miles. And when you think of Mercedes-Benz owners in particular, they're more likely to have a private garage than somebody buying a Chevy Equinox that, that's what they could afford, a $30,000 car, and they live in an apartment. So, this might not be as horrible a decision as it seems, and as everybody is screaming and saying, oh my God, Mercedes, what have you done here? Now, would I have preferred if they spent a little more money and had that step up, booster installed? Yeah, I'm not going to say that. Even if it charged at a low rate, like the Lucid Air now charges at like 47 kilowatts at a Tesla supercharger. Even if it just could take in some juice, because there's so many of them out there. I don't know what that would have cost Mercedes to add that, but I'm thinking, in a couple of years, it won't matter. So, we have to look at it that way. I almost every article I've read has been that this is the end of that vehicle. Like there's nobody is going to want to buy it because they like, how could you do this? It's a fatal flaw. Nobody will want to buy it. And on the same token, I always point out about how my EVs have access to superchargers. It's liberating. I know there's a charger no matter where I go. I know I don't even have to look ahead of time, like map out where I'm going. there's going to be chargers there that I can use. So yeah, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. Is it a hit? Yes, it is. It's really unfortunate, but practically it might not be as bad as what we think, particularly in, just a couple of years.
Yeah.
We could have a whole different landscape than what we have now.
I agree. My take on this, sorry, Dom. My take is that owners shouldn't have to know about voltages, though. I think we're in the next phase of the adoption curve now, where that shouldn't really affect your car buying. I don't think the average person should know the voltage of a charging station the way that we do on this podcast, and maybe the viewers and listeners also, would know. Like, oh, that's an old 50 kilowatt charger. It's bound not to work on the new Mercedes. Like, I don't think the average buyer of any car should have to know these things. It seems a little silly. But either way, follow the in-car nav and you'll be okay. Anyway, sorry, Dom.
No, I was just going to say, so when I first saw this story, they were just talking about a couple markets in Europe not getting this booster, DC-to-DC booster. And we had a comment here from Anton Grand that I left on the screen for quite a while. The 800-volt booster is optional, confirmed by an engineer on X, and likely standard in the US. So it's not necessarily, it could be still coming. We just haven't seen it. And Philly Phil also says regarding a DC booster will be offered as an option in markets with less advanced charging infrastructure. Exactly, Mercedes are 8 times F1 champs. They didn't miss anything. So I don't know how their F1 performance.
484 miles, small battery, almost 500 miles of range, 5 miles per kilowatt hour. Mercedes-Benz saying, look, in the real world, 75 miles. I think they said highway speeds. Like 420 is realistic. So they're so confident in this. They've built the whole thing around this silicon carbide technology and 800 volt architecture. And it's a 45 grand car, which is what, 40,000 US, if I make the conversion. We will give our final word to our very special guest, Isaiah, this week. Just generally about the car or the charging. What do you reckon about this Mercedes CLA?
Oh, I love it. When it first came out, I was obsessed with this thing, and I'm very excited. To my understanding, this will be made in Europe and then shipped here to the United States. And with current tariffs, it's going to be interesting to see if this even comes here, and if it does, what the price will be. But in terms of range, efficiency, even the charge curve, I think it held past more than 100 kilowatts up until like 95%. This thing is awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing this on the road. And I want to drive it really bad.
Yeah,
same.
Cool, isn't it? Nice car. So. All right. Well, we won't get into... we did have some other stuff on the list this week, and that includes 17 states in the US suing the federal government over NEVI funding. But I think for the states of Tom's, blood pressure, let's not go down that route. But just to let people know, it's on the list. We had it. We won't talk about it this week, but we didn't ignore that news. Maybe
I'll make one comment. They
on.
have to release the funds to the companies that have signed contracts. These companies invested tons of money, their own money, with a signed contract guaranteeing them those funds. They have to release that money. Okay, if they're going to stop all the other funds, no new contracts, that's you can do that, but some of these companies have put out, millions of dollars of their own money, because it wasn't 100% funded by the NEVI program. You had to commit, I think it was 70%. They would donate up to 70%. You had to commit 30%. So some of these companies have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of their own money out invested, waiting to finish the project with the NEVI funding. Those people have to get their money. They have to. And I would 100% support any lawsuit that sued the government to make them release that funds. Beyond the signed contracts, that's, that'll go away. But they have to. But from what I understand, from somebody that's in the know that told me, they literally fired all the people in the department that were responsible for cutting the checks to the states to release the money to these companies. So with everybody fired, that is the only people authorized to sign the checks. They're not saying we're not going to give you the money, but there's just nobody that can give you the money. Yeah. So they're just slow walking it till the people, till the companies either go out of business or give up. That was like the position. So let's see how this plays out.
Right. Let's all go and hit subscribe on Rivian Updates, which is where Isaiah spends his time. So your Rivian, you reckon end of the month you get it back then?
Yeah, not accident related. There was some sort of coolant issue, which then affected the computer, which sometimes while driving, it would just totally shut off. And so nothing would be responsive even after a hard reset. I have some other things on the bulletin, a 12-volt battery recall replacement, and supposed to have my tonneau installed, but hopefully I get that thing back pretty soon. I miss it already.
You put running boards on it too, right?
I did. Luckily, that wasn't an issue, and they've encountered a ton of other people with electric running boards on the Rivian, which was nice to hear. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I went to the local vet over here the other day, and there was a brand new Rivian, not a brand new, it was just a Rivian there, and I was like, "Is that Isaiah's?" And so I thought maybe you're inside, but
there are quite a few.
It had no running board, so I knew it wasn't you.
Yeah, I'm not in Tallahassee, but there are quite a few Rivians, and it's astonishing to see all the electric vehicles starting to just come about. I mean, I think in the past, just 5 years ago, like it was just a couple Model S's, X's, and 3s and Leafs and some Bolts, and now we are really seeing so many. I mean, every day I see so many new EVs.
Simon Matthews is asking what is an electric running board. I think tell him, Isaiah.
Yeah. So other than I forgot what the exact word is, but a static running board where it would always be there. You open your door, it's still there. An electric running board, when you open the door, it pops out, and then when you close the door, it goes away. And those are actual running boards. And there's another term for running boards that are there the entire time.
Yeah.
But that's what that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice. All right. So go and hit subscribe on Isaiah's channel and on socials as well, because Rivian's the real deal, boys and girls. They're going to do it. We are very, very optimistic about that. And, timeline of R2, price of R2, all being reconfirmed. And, man, it's going to be a big year next year. Huge year. So stay on top of the news and get in the club and hit subscribe. I'm not, because I'm logged out on this screen, but I am subscribed. But I'm in a different browser. I'm in the Brave browser to use this software. But there we go. And it didn't crash this week. I'm very disappointed. I've not been crashing for a couple of weeks now. Never mind. Hey, let's get to the end of our podcast. Thank you very much for listening and watching. If you join us live on a Friday and join in with the live chat, man, and we leave a comment like the guy earlier. And or in the YouTube section of the show, you can hit subscribe. Always helps if you give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. That tells the algorithm to recommend us to other people. And if you like the show, leave a comment and let us know what you think of the stories that we have talked about this week. We will be back, maybe for a midweek show, but certainly in 7 days' time. Thank you very much for watching and listening and joining us again. And we will see you again very soon. Hey, Dom! Say ciao.
Ciao.